This lesson is predominantly coming from this section of the Bible shown in the highlighted section of this chart. Lesson 20, Breakdown of the Law of Moses. Before we get into the three main categories of the Law of Moses, I want to remind you that the Law of Moses was part of the Old Covenant God made with Israel approximately 1400 years before Christ came and instituted the New Covenant. Although many of these laws are no longer in effect because they are under the Old Covenant, most of the 10 Commandments are in the New Covenant as well, and therefore they are still in effect today. We will go over that in the New Testament when we talk about the New Covenant. Although the Mosaic Law or Old Covenant is not in effect today, as we shall see, there are principles, symbolism, or types from that law that are carried over into the New Testament and therefore are still pertinent to us today. Also, the part of the Bible that we call the New Testament was a transitional period from the Old Covenant to the New Covenant. Therefore, there was much commotion about this law of Moses in the New Testament. Understanding it and its purpose will go a long way in helping you understand the New Testament part of the Bible. That is why we are going over this. There were three major categories in the Mosaic Law: civil law, moral law, and ceremonial law. The civil laws governed property and injury issues, differentiating between criminal and accidental cases. Where crime or negligence was involved, the law of Moses specified penalties, compensations, and procedures. There were laws regarding servants and masters, as well as ownership and inheritance of property. The moral laws governed personal relationships. In the moral and ethical realm, there were laws of marriage responsibilities, sexual misconduct, sexual perversion, proper business procedures, proper farming procedures, and strict commandments regarding a person's appearance. In matters of diet, health, and cleanliness, there were numerous, very strict procedures and laws. The Law of Moses also contained extensive lists of what the Israelites were and were not allowed to eat. Strict rules of cleanliness and sanitation were part of the Law of Moses. It specified situations that determined whether a person was considered temporarily unclean and the rules of ostracism that applied to them. It detailed procedures for certain sicknesses, such as leprosy, with very strict rules of isolation. One more note about the Law of Moses. It dealt with physical conditions and situations seemingly in a very harsh way. Remember that although these sometimes were for the sake of health, these laws predominantly were serving as types or symbols of spiritual truths regarding sin. For example, the laws regarding someone who was a leper were very harsh, but they were meant to symbolize the utter abhorrence and danger of sin for the believer in the New Testament church. Thus, many of the severe laws of the Old Covenant, although no longer in effect today under the New Covenant, nevertheless were fulfilling two purposes: the lesser physical purpose during the Old Testament period, and the more important spiritual lesson or principle for us today. Their more important lesson was the symbolic spiritual meaning for those of us in the New Covenant church. Then there were the ceremonial or religious laws which governed the elaborate system of worship ordained by God for the Old Testament Israelites. The study of the Mosaic Law and its symbolism or typology verifies the identity of Jesus Christ as Savior of the world, the Messiah, which is so important for the faith of every believer. The study of this part of the law remarkably reveals a pattern for the steps that a New Testament born-again believer must take today. The advantage of this video Bible course will be greatly realized in our next lesson, as it will contain graphics put together in such a way that it will make it easier and interesting to learn this important topic. Because breaking up that topic into the normal 6 to 8 minute lessons would do you a great disservice, I have completely covered this topic in a special 15-minute presentation. I urge you to set aside a special time to give our next lesson your undivided attention. Thank you for your patience and faithfulness. Goodbye for now.